From your first collection of poetry released in 2004 to the work you're producing now, how would you say you've evolved as a poet?
That's a good question. I know that I've grown as a poet. I think that I know I'm doing things that I would not have been able to do 20 years ago, 16 years ago. I'm using language in ways that I might not have had the courage to explore back then. At the same time, I think I found ways to express more complex ideas with language as I evolved as a writer. And I do like to explore complex ideas, but they can be difficult in poetry because you don't want to get too, you need to just stay focused. You need to keep it clean and direct. And anyway, does that help? Does that answer? I think that I've always been really conscious of the fact that we carry those events of childhood with us for so long. We expend so much energy working through those events. It just seems such a shame. It just, I saw it, I experienced it myself, but I saw it in my students, of course. And it's always, it's always been my thought that, God, if we could just reduce those tragic events, especially in those first 15 years, which are so formative, which are so powerful in our lives. If we could just reduce the pain of those years, I think that we'd all be better off. I think we'd have other things to expend our energy on too. And it seems like a really important thing, probably the most important thing for me.
Yeah, so the title is shared of the anthology is shared with one of your poems. Do you remember how that came about in the process?
Well, it was who suggested it? I think it was John B. Lee who suggested the title be the title of the poem. And there was a bit of back and forth on that. And there was some thought that perhaps I should then change the title of my poem. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure he was the one to suggest that. I'm not saying that, but it did come up that perhaps I could change the title of my poem. And I didn't really want to. And I did express my concerns about that. And they came around. So there wasn't I went to France with a group of writers. We did a sort of retreat, and one of the events that was organized for us, again by my publisher, was this reading at Shakespeare and Company, and it was just fantastic. It was such a good audience. It was a small store, so many books, but there were people on the floor, there were people standing along the walls, and you like that for a reading. That's what you want. You don't want a large space with 20 people sparsely seated in the audience. You want a cozy environment. You want lots of books there, and you want that feeling that you're really connecting with people. And I really had that when I read there. It was really nice. And I remember one gentleman coming up to me afterwards and talking to me about my poetry. I just felt I felt like a poet, I felt like the real thing, because so often I feel like an imposter, let's face it. I think, come on, are you really a poet? I don't know. But in that moment, I felt like a poet, and it felt so good, and it felt good to have reached someone in that way.
That's